Welcome to Hard Talk. I'm Sթիվեն Sackur. The war in Ukraine has focused attention on Vladimir Putin's apparent desire to remake a greater Russian space, incorporating chunks of the former Soviet empire. With that in mind, keep an eye on what's happening in the tiny disputed territory of Nagorno-Karabakh, where ethnic Armenians, backed by Russia, continue to defy Azerbaijan's claim to sovereignty. My guest is Ruben Vardanyan, an Armenian who made his fortune in Russia and who is now de facto Prime Minister of Nagorno-Karabakh. His enclave is in deep trouble. Will Russia save it? Ruben Vardanyan in Nagorno-Karabakh, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Vardanyan, many in our Hard Talk audience will not know very much about Nagorno-Karabakh, but suffice to say you are the state minister in a tiny territory of some 120,000 people, and right now you have an urgent crisis because your land route out to Armenia is currently blockaded. What is the situation for the people living in your territory today?
First of all, I want to say thank you for doing this interview. It's very important for the world knowing what's happening in a locked-out territory where there's 120,000 people living in their own homeland thousands of years, and last 35 years was fighting their own independence. And 38 days in December 12th, the Azerbaijan named eco-activists blocked the road, and with the support of the Azerbaijani state, now they control the road and we don't get anything except from Red Cross and Russian peacekeepers. And we have 30,000 kids. It's a winter, no electricity, limited electricity, no gas basically now, and no food and medicaments and gasoline without help of Red Cross and Russian peacekeepers can come to our territory now.
So the Red Cross is making sure that some vital medicines get through, but I noticed that the authorities in your enclave have implemented a ration system where buckwheat, rice, sugar, pasta and cooking oil is made available. But it sounds to me, if this continues, your territory is not going to be viable for very long, is it? I mean, people are going to suffer and this cannot continue.
First of all, Red Cross has only one truck, two trucks with 15 tons. It's a very limited number of the medicaments or food they can bring, including the Russian peacekeepers. No illusion about how much they deliver. The second, you don't know well, is Armenians in Artsakh. It's very strong people. We've been living in this thousands of years, and they are very strong in their commitment to stay in homeland. And like I said, the 35 years, this fight happened, and we are defending our territory, and we believe in our values and our system. That's why, with all the difficulties we're facing, I believe the people will stay strong and will stay committed to our own homeland.
Yeah, you just referred to your territory as Artsakh. I should make it plain that while you, in your territory, refer to it as Artsakh, the Azerbaijani government, of course, calls it Nagorno-Karabakh, as indeed does the international community. So I just want to be clear about that. The biggest confusion for me about what is happening right now is that you have around 2,000 Russian military personnel on your territory as supposed peacekeepers. Now, why are they not opening the road to make sure that supplies can get through?
Before answering this question, I want to say, if you look the history books in Azerbaijan, Azerbaijan Soviet Republic time in the 80s, it will be the same Artsakh name and will be mentioned as Armenian territories. Why I'm not doing something new. It's already been existed in a Soviet time in Azerbaijani historical book in the school. But let's go back to your question. First of all, people need to understand there's only 2,000 peacekeepers, and they have a very limited mandate to use the weapon. and it's an eco-activist, it's a civilian who closed the road formally. And we have 540 kilometers of the border, which needs to be also controlled by Russian peacekeepers. Why? Without delusion, it's a very small number of the soldiers. We have only light weapon, and we have no right to shoot. This is why, with any peacekeeper, it's always very difficult to interfere between between two sides.
But isn't the truth, Mr. Vardanyan, that right now Vladimir Putin has much bigger problems on his plate? The invasion of Ukraine has led to a war which is sucking up resources in Moscow. And the last thing Putin really, frankly, wants to do is get involved in a conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh. That's the truth. It leaves you much weaker, doesn't it? Because Russia's support is just not forthcoming.
First of all, I don't know what's happening in his decision-making, but we have a limitation. In November 9, 2020, Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Russia signed the document, which was the number of the soldiers limited by Azerbaijani side. Which is why I don't know what you are talking about. Maybe they have sent or not sent, but today we follow the document which signed, which Azerbaijan today fully violated, because they guarantee open road for Armenians who live in Artsakh without any control.
Right.
And now we're in full violation.
Yeah, I understand that there was this understanding. It involved the Armenian government and the Azerbaijani government. What's interesting to me is that the Armenian government, led by Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan, is now very critical of Moscow, saying that Russian peacekeepers are failing in their duties. But you, interestingly, are being much less critical of Moscow. Why?
You know, I advise you to come here with us, and you will understand how it's important when you are surrounded by a state who has 10 million people with a lot of money, a lot of weapons, and we have only 120,000 people with 30,000 kids, which needs to be saved. And we have 2,000 Russian soldiers. Do you want to piece of them? I want to ask you this question. Are you ready to piece off the people who stay with you in this situation?
I'm here in London. You're in Nagorno-Karabakh. It's the reality for you that has to be dealt with. And it seems right now that not only are the Russians not helping you, but your relationship with Armenia, and in particular with Prime Minister Pashinyan, is becoming increasingly toxic. And it seems the Yerevan government doesn't really have a working relationship with you.
I don't know this information. And by the way, in our country, the number one person, the president, who has always good contact with the prime minister. Is why I don't know about what you're talking. And it's a speculation, which I'm not sure it makes sense to reference in our conversation.
I think it's important to look at your background and why you are sitting in Nagorno-Karabakh today. You're a very wealthy man, reputed to be worth at least $1 billion thanks to a business career in Moscow, which coincided with Vladimir Putin's rise. And clearly the two of you are quite close. Why did you decide last year to renounce your Russian citizenship, which required special permission from Putin, and remove yourself from Russia and decide to live in Nagorno-Karabakh? Why did you do that?
First of all, I started my business in 1991 with the $35,000 with American investors. And I built, together with my partners, the best investment bank in this region, with bringing a lot of investors to Russia and biggest companies. I made the business in England, I made the business in the United States, I have a board membership in 30 different countries, and I've been doing a lot of things in many places, in philanthropy, in social. This is why it's, I think your conclusion about my closeness to Vladimir Putin is not right, because I've been working with many people in the power or in the different countries, and many private sector.
Well, you know that the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project and the Navalny Anti-Corruption Foundation have both accused you of, let's put it this way, dodgy business dealings in the past. Now, you've never been charged with anything, but nonetheless, there are allegations that you have been part of an oligarch system that Vladimir Putin, watched over, and that's partly an explanation of your great wealth.
Look, 4 years ago, this publication happened, and during these 4 years, I continue to stay and keep my position in many, many international organizations, which confirm what people who know is true, people who knows me personally, understand that this is always allegation without any proof, because no legal case, any place, any country has ever happened. More it was an allegation about the King Charles, about George Clooney, about many other my colleagues and friends who've been working with me in a different project, like the Minister Mentor of Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew, and many, many other people which I've been privileged to know and work with. Why, with all my respect to journalists who did their work, its allegation was just the publication without any proof. And second, the financial institutions I was run at the time was the trillions of dollars of turnover with the hundreds of thousands of clients. And blaming Ruben Vardanyan to doing something was like blaming JP Morgan or, I don't know, Citibank heads about doing something which they, of course, being responsible, but not doing themselves. That's why I think it was a little manipulation, and you using this information
well,
again.
I'm simply reflecting the record, and you're of course welcome to challenge anything I say. But the truth is that the Azerbaijanis, in particular, they say that you are, and I'm quoting here, political analyst Elshan Sahinoglu in Baku. He says, Ruben Vardanyan is Moscow's man in Karabakh, and the Kremlin is preparing for you to take complete charge of Nagorno-Karabakh. Is that your intent?
You know, I thought our program will be about human rights, about the situation, humanitarian catastrophe. And if we will go about all the speculation, and especially Azerbaijanis are doing it, we can go forever. I will prefer to talk about how the 120,000 people surviving in during this horrible time and have a pressure from, you name it, political scientists or eco-activists. By the way, I recommend you to check how many ecological protests have ever happened in Azerbaijan during the last 30 years, and how many times autocratic regime of Aliyev allowed any opposition for Azerbaijani, not Armenians, allowed to say any words against him. This is why we're talking about something which I'm really a little bit surprised, but you're not touching the point of what's happening now real in here and what is the behavior of Azerbaijan. By the way, today's Europarliament.
No, I'm more than interested in talking about what is happening. But what is happening clearly is part of a bigger picture. The bigger picture is that the conflict around your territory between Armenia and Azerbaijan has been going on for many decades. What we saw in 2020 was that the Azerbaijani military scored a major victory, pushed Nagorno-Karabakh back. You lost, what, 2/3 and more of the territory you controlled before 2020. You now control a tiny enclave which is suffering from an economic blockade right now. And it seems to me your only realistic option is either to work out a political deal with Azerbaijan, or for the people, the Armenian community in Nagorno-Karabakh, to decide that this is no longer sustainable and leave the territory. So which is it to be, a political deal or leave?
First of all, let me finish. Today, Europarliament just approved the resolution with a strong message to President Aliyev requesting the deblockade the road, which showing is not only Russia, but in France, in Europarliament, in the United States, surprisingly have a common view about this issue, which is really something very special, because we all know what is the relationship between major European countries and Russia today.
But Mr. Vardanyan, even if the blockade is lifted, my question remains, how can your community in Nagorno-Karabakh be viable in the long term? Even the government in Yerevan, the Armenian government, says that this is no longer a territorial issue, i.e. that they're not making a claim to turn Nagorno-Karabakh into an independent state or part of Armenia. They say in Yerevan it is simply a matter of rights, that it's a question of negotiating guaranteed security and human rights for the Armenian community inside your territory. But the implication is that in the long run, you will be part of the Azerbaijani sovereign state. Do you accept that?
Artsakh people, Armenians who live in Artsakh, from 1988, when it was Soviet times, said we will not be part of Azerbaijan. And they fight for their freedom, and they did all the right legal and other steps. And we are today facing a very clear question to the world, saying, do we have a right for self-determination, especially in a state who violate all the human rights for your own people. How you see possible to us to live in a country where this regime, by the way, just for your understanding, for other people understanding, the family who ruling the country is from 104 years of existence of Azerbaijan Republic with being part of Soviet Union or independence, 44 years, one family controlled the country. There is no rights for the Azerbaijani people, not about talking about the Armenian. How you see the possibility for ethnic minority, how they treat us, to get any rights or any defense? That's why, for us, it's not a question about do we want it or not. We don't see any chance. By the way, it's blockade. And yesterday, example was very simple. The kids, which was, because we had a separate families, who, unfortunately, kids was blocked in Armenia, couldn't come back. After 6 weeks, the Russian peacekeeper tried to bring them back to Artsakh. And they've been stopped, and they've been checked, and were psychologically attacked by Azeris. Xenophobia is so high.
Hang on, I want to be clear about this then. Sorry to interrupt, but I do want to be clear. Are you saying that for you, and of course, frankly, many people say that right now you are running things in Nagorno-Karabakh, you are in no way prepared to have any sort of negotiation or dialogue with President Aliyev and the Azerbaijan government?
No, we are ready for a negotiation. We're ready for a negotiation with understanding from Azerbaijan side, with this negotiation for two sides, because what we said, and we said from the first day of the asking independence, we understand and we accept that we will living side to side, but it will be separate territory, it will be separate state, it will be separate rules of law, because we are a democratic country. We have 4 presidents being elected. We cannot see ourselves be part of Azerbaijan, but we respect what we've been living in the same region, and we need to find a way, despite all the difficulties, to find a solution which will be acceptable from both sides, because it will be a lot of people die.
Do I take from that then that you fundamentally disagree with the government in Yerevan, who say it is now simply a question of negotiating the right sort of deal for your people, frankly, inside an Azerbaijani state? They say it's a question of rights, human rights and security rights for your people being guaranteed, but they say it is no longer an issue of territory or sovereignty.
Armenian government, the leader of the Armenian government said, whatever will make the decision, the leaders of Artsakh, we will follow our choice. First. Second, we got already clear messages from France, from the United States, from Russia, but we also see this issue is not closed, the page is not turned out. This is why, turned down. This is why, despite all the rhetoric of Azerbaijan, international community, by the way, in UN discussion in UN recently, in Security Council, it was clear. The subject is not over. The subject is not over because we have a right to self-determination, because ethnic cleansing is restricted by UN charter. This is why, despite all the speculations from Azerbaijan, the story is not over. We believe we have a right for our own independence, for our own right to live in our own homeland. Most of the people who live in Artsakh understand the difficulties what we are facing, ready for stay and defend our own home, despite understanding that we are small and we are very big.
Yeah, well, you say it's not over, but one big factor in all of this is Russia, is it not? I mean, for decades, Armenia has relied on Russia for military support. I just wonder what you have drawn in terms of lessons from Putin's invasion, his war of aggression in Ukraine. Do you regard that war, first of all, as something you should condemn, and do you also see that it has dangerous lessons for Armenia?
Look, I'm now state minister of the small republic where there's 120,000 people suffering because of the huge attack from Azerbaijan state. And I'm responsible to defend my kids who live here and my nation. And whatever needs to them to be defended, I will do it. That's why I want to answer this question the way that I will say, whatever is necessary to save Artsakh, I will do it.
Well, that's no answer at all. I just asked you whether you would condemn Putin's invasion of Ukraine.
And I answer you saying whatever will be necessary to defend my own people, whatever will be right for them in the situation, to stay silent, because I believe whatever my answer to about position in Russia, about France, about the United States or others will damage the opportunity to get support of international, it will be wrong for me to comment. This is why with all my regret what's happening in a different conflict, by the way, not only there in Ukraine, but in Yemen, in Syria, and many other places in the world. I care only about what's happening with my people, what I stay today in blockade 38 days with no electricity, no gas.
Thing is, you're very much out of step with many Armenians living in Armenia because they're very worried by the implications of Putin's invasion of Ukraine. I'm going to quote to you Benjamin Pogosyan, head of the Center for Political and Economic Strategic Studies in Yerevan. He says it is becoming obvious that we can no longer rely on Russia. Even if Russia gets out of this Ukraine war in one piece, they may well try to include us in Armenia in a sort of union state with Belarus, and that is not something we want. Do you want that? Do you think that Armenia's fate and future lies with Russia, Putin's Russia?
I don't want to talk about Armenia. We're a separate country. I'm talking about Artsakh. Artsakh don't want to be part of Azerbaijan, which is clear, it's all.
And you're quite happy for a long-term reliance on Vladimir Putin?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, it's quite simple. It seems to me that you're saying we are now quite distant politically from Yerevan, from the Armenian government, so your only guarantor, your only, frankly, hope for survival is Vladimir Putin.
It's not true. The President Macron clearly announced and made a lot of efforts to support Artsakh. By the way, the Speaker of French Senate was also made the same statement. The U.S. ambassador said recently they will cooperate with Russia and try to find a solution to help Artsakh to get out of this situation. That's why you're manipulating a little bit, because Western biggest country like France and the United States also clearly send a message that they care about what's happening here.
You know, there are people inside Nagorno-Karabakh, and you're a small community, only just over 100,000 people, who think that your time as chief minister, state minister, has been a disaster. Bela Lalayan, she says that all you've done is stir up more trouble and jeopardize the security of our people. Some want you out, and they want you out now.
It's normal. People have different opinions. I'm a happy person to be here with the Artsakh people. I'm walking in the street every day.
But the point is, many of the people in Nagorno-Karabakh think you're an outsider. You came in from Moscow, having made a fortune in Russia. You're not. You weren't born in Nagorno-Karabakh. You were born in Yerevan. Many people in Nagorno-Karabakh wonder if you truly have their interests at heart.
Now, you can look at my background. 20 years I've been doing here. My grandmother from here. I made around 89 projects in Artsakh during the last 20 years. My son served in the army here. My daughter was here. So it's all speculations, which people, of course, exist any places where they want to speculate and make the dirty stories without looking at the real story. I came here September 2nd of 2022, and I said I will be like any ordinary person. I didn't pretend to get any position. The president offered me the position, but I'm happy to stay without any position here, and I will stay here. I don't care do I will be state minister or not. I'm here with the people who need my support, not because I'm rich, because they want to see the people outside of Artsakh realize what Artsakh is the key, not only for them. Artsakh is the key for entire Armenian nation, because Artsakh is one of the key DNA keeper of Armenian nation thousands of years. Again,
so to be clear and to sum up, because we're out of time, you are going nowhere. Is that the message?
I will stay with my people here. Whatever we will face it, we will face together, yes.
Ruben Vardanyan, I thank you very much indeed for joining me on Hard Talk. Thank you.
Thank you.